Yes, good morning and welcome. You're watching Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV. My name is Fred Indimuli. It's that time when you take a look at the headlines. This morning, we're privileged to have with us, let me start off with the lady, Rehema Jaldesa, woman representative, Isiolo County, Peter Mathuki, acting Secretary General of Wiper Party, also a former member of the East Africa Legislative Assembly, and Ndindi Nyoro, MP Kiharu constituency. Good morning na karibuni sana. Of course, some of these individuals on my panel this morning are first-time legislators, talking about Rehema Jaldesa and Ndindi Nyoro, who is now the MP for Kiharu. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Even as we take a look at the headlines this morning, probably I give you an opportunity to say something as you introduce yourself for the very first time. Rehema Jaldesa, let's start with you.
Thank you, Fred. My name is Rehema Jaldesa, the county woman, Isiolo County, and I'm glad to be here. I want to take this opportunity to thank the people of Isiolo County for having the confidence in me and overwhelmingly voting me in Jubilee Party.
Karibu sana. Asante sana. Ndindi Nyoro, MP Kiharu, who replaced the now senator for Murang'a County. Irungu Kangata, yes, was the MP for Kiharu, now the senator for Murang'a. Ndindi Nyoro takes his place as the MP for Kiharu. Bwana Nyoro, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Fred and Citizen TV, for having us this morning. I want to say a big thank you to the people of Kiharu for giving me the privilege to represent them in the National Assembly, and also the Jubilee Party, and I'm sure we'll do great things for this country as a party, even as members of parliament and as a government led by our president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
Okay, also on the panel this morning we have Peter Mathuki. He has been the Deputy Secretary General for Wiper Party for a while now. He has also served in the East African Legislative Assembly. Now he comes to the panel again as the Acting Secretary General of Wiper Party. Remember, only last week Hassan Omar resigned from the party. He was the SG. Now Peter Mathuki takes over. Bwana Mathuki, how do you feel as the new Sec Gen for Wiper Party?
Thank you, Muli, and thank you for inviting us this morning. My name again is Peter Mathuki. Yes, of course, happy to be part of the Wiper family, which is one, of course, the largest now parties we have in the country. And of course, thank people of Machakos who came out in large numbers to support the candidature of me and myself in the just concluded elections. Thank you.
Of course, Machakos was in sharp focus yesterday because Deputy President took the Jubilee Party campaigns to Machakos. The headlines this morning, at least apart from the campaigns, which have been featured in both front pages of the dailies, I'm talking about the Standard and the Daily Nation, pictures of Raila Odinga and his team in Kajiado at the bottom of the Daily Nation. Just above that we have the Deputy President William Ruto in Machakos County at Kimutwa. And the headline on the Daily Nation reads, Raila plans court battles over IEBC. NASA says it will this week push for the prosecution of top poll managers and more than 1,000 other officials with accusers of bungling the August 8th presidential election, which was nullified by the Supreme Court. Other headlines on the front pages, Free Press, Orengo now ends row with the Nation. And the other one is that lecturers to stage another salary strike. Of course, on the top strip of the Daily Nation, Jeff Koskei breaks world record in 10-kilometer road race. Uhuru Kenya paid tribute to Star's impressive run in the Czech Republic. That story is on the back pages. On the front page of the Standard, the main headline has nothing to do with politics. Fresh radical rules for KCSE, KCPE exams. Ministry takes the fight against exam cheating a notch higher by introducing answer sheets bearing names and color photographs of each candidate to knock out imposters. But the photos of the two campaign teams yesterday in Machakos and Kajiado respectively featuring on the top strip of the Standard. Other very interesting headlines are in the inside pages. A boy has shot himself on page 10 of the Daily Nation. Boy shoots himself with his dad's police gun. Boy playing with father's police gun shoots himself dead. That happened in Juja, and police are investigating that incident, which happened on Saturday. Very many other interesting headlines, but let's start off with education. Of course, quite a number of things happening around the education sector. The school fires, getting ready for exams. Now we're seeing this new fresh changes in trying to rein in exam cheating. And we'll start off from there. Rehema Jaldesa, we've come a long way in as far as the education sector is concerned. Fred Matiang'i, the CS for Education, has been applauded for the kind of changes he's brought. Of course, now he has a wider mandate as he serves as the acting CS for Interior, but when it comes to education, this is the main thing. This is where we applaud him most. And now we're seeing him even tightening the bolts even further in as far as exams are concerned. We'll look at the other issue to do with the St. George's Fire, but let's start off with these radical rules for KCSE, KCP exams. What do you think of these new changes, introducing photographs to the answer sheets of candidates?
Thank you, Fred. I think I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the CS Matiang'i for making us proud as Jubilee administration. I think this is a welcome move. There is nothing as frustrating as when the examinations, the children prepare for examination, and then at the end of the period, they don't get the results that they have been working for. So as we move on, I think this is a welcome move. And as new legislators, we intend to bring more bills that will introduce more measures, more reforms to education sector. So I think this is a welcome move, and we want to congratulate him for that.
Bona Peter Mathuki, of course, education this time round comes at a time, especially this examination period comes at a time when we're still politicking, unfortunately so, because we thought we would be done by this with this election shenanigans, but we still have an election to come next month. It's also the time for campaigns. On the campaign platforms, the date for the beginning of the exams has been part of the agenda, people discussing whether or not we should have the election on October 17th. Can we delay them further because it will coincide with the exams? Now we're seeing other rules coming in and out. Yesterday, Bwana Kalonzo Musyoka was talking about the free secondary education that would have started in September had NASA taken over. Surely education is one of those things that we hold dear. What do you think of this new changes introduced by NEC and Fred Matiang'i?
Obviously, education is one of the key issues in any country that is democratic, and of course the key pillars of a country that is developing like Kenya. And therefore it becomes very important for those concerned, of course, to put measures to ensure that education is not at all affected by other parameters like politics and so forth. And therefore, when we say that NASA, obviously our plans were to ensure that education again starts to be free from September. And we said, of course, this was again enjoined by circumstances, and therefore we want to assure the Kenyan the parents and of course the students and pupils again immediately we take over, and very soon they will still enjoy that free education. Of course, some of those changes put are supposed to be in place because we must make sure that cheating should never happen in education sector, because again it's not allowed. But again, and which is very important, we should not make education or exams to look like it's an animal that is awaiting our kids. We should make education user-friendly, where kids and everyone feels comfortable to go and sit for their exams or to enjoy education. Because again, once we start making very stringent rules and making things like very tight, our kids are panicking. And that's why you see again this kind of cheating. So we should make it more user-friendly.
Do you feel, for example, these new changes having a photograph on the answer sheet, having the candidate's color photograph and bearing the answer sheet already bearing the name, are you saying that's a bit intimidating for the candidates?
It could be being the first time, obviously, to be done for people who find may affect. One, it may be important in the long run. It may, of course, to some extent affect how it is done. I thought those are some of the things that should have been done with consultations with those stakeholders before you simply go in and start putting some sort of PR looking issues in a very sensitive sector like education.
Okay, let's come to what I did in Nyoro. Do you see any risk involved in such change where probably the face of the candidate, the name of the candidate is already there? Could markers, maybe the examination markers probably. Could they be influenced by that? That just by looking, some people, we're all humans, and I may look at your photo and I don't like you, and that's it.
Fred, I think in future we should actually look the biometric way, because to us as the Jubilee party and the government, we are very serious about education. And when you talk about education, of course the first thing that comes to mind is affordability, of course given the income levels of our people. And that is why we have been offering free primary education. Now we'll be introducing free secondary education. And because ours is not just political, we are even giving away to the people who will be graduating from high school. That is why we have created so many TTCs, and we have a plan to create technical training colleges in every constituency. And of course we have expanded our university education, because we are very serious about inclusivity in the education sector and affordability. But the other parameter is of course quality. And when you talk about quality, you cannot have an exam, Fred, and people can just do it like Nimutezo too. So we have to put up all measures that we should to make sure that the quality of our education is top notch. And by the way, Fred, even to move away from primary, KCP and KCSE, we have resolved as Jubilee that the kind of examinations we'll be doing and conducting in our TTCs will not be theoretical. If we are going to a TTC to be trained to be an auto mechanic, to be trained to be a carpenter, there is no sense giving these people theory, because you have to move from theory to practice, because that is why we are training these people. And actually from next year, Fred, we'll be taking our candidates from TTCs through purely practical examination, because that is what matters. And of course you cannot fake practical examinations.
Yes, and just before we go on a break, because we're going on a break in the next few minutes, still to do with education, of course, and you speak of quality in education, but quality is not just about what is happening in class, even outside class, even the environment within the school. Of course, we've had these incidences 1 week apart, the fire at Moi Girls High School, which was very unfortunate. 9 people died. Another fire incident was reported this past weekend, just at the neighboring school here, St. George's High School here in Nairobi. It started at the school's kitchen. It's been established that it had nothing to do with the students. No one was injured in that incident, but it was still a fire within that compound of the school. When we talk about quality, safety measures come into mind. Surely, this time round, it must be something that even the legislators will take up. Rehema Jaldesa, I'm sure you as a parent, you must be concerned about the safety of our children in schools.
Yeah, true, we do, and our condolences, of course, to Moi Girls. I think this is a worrying situation. Fred, if you remember, last year, just before the examination, we had incidents of fire, and maybe this has connection to do with the examination. I'm not yet sure about that. But as you rightly put it, safety is of a paramount importance. And that's why I said going forward we need to look at education holistically, not just from academic point of view, but also in terms of safety, in terms of motivation, guiding and counseling, and quite a number of components.
Yes, Peter Mathuki, of course, we've tended to focus more on classwork and the quality of how our children are taught and stuff like that. But surely there are other issues, fires, student safety. Now I'm seeing even in the papers, and it's both on the Daily Nation and the Standard, on page 3 of the Daily Nation, suicide, the deadly prey stalking our youngsters, cases of depression. Yes, and they say students in boarding schools have more clinically significant depressive symptoms compared to day schools. That's on the page 3 of the Standard. This is the kind of quality we're talking about, that probably our education system, the environment even in schools, it may produce very brilliant minds, but it also has negative effects on the candidates as well, on the learners.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, that what Matiang should be busy doing is in fact addressing some of those issues, the issues of discipline, the issues of ensuring that, as much as possible, stakeholders, they are consultative programs even in schools involving all stakeholders. In fact, of course, as we control with the parents who lost their kids in Moi, we should be busy seeing some measures from the ministry on how to address some of these things to ensure safety is there. to ensure discipline is again strengthened. It's not about performance alone, and therefore, when you bring some of these photo issues on the news on the papers, it looks a bit diversionary, and therefore, those are now the key issues the Ministry of Education should be addressing. And it's very if you look at the advanced countries, education and learning is not does not look necessarily very burdensome. It looks friendly, and that's why we are saying the Minister of Education, the Minister even serious, should be busy now thinking innovatively on how to ensure that education in Kenya is user friendly and our kids are not depressed. I can assure you, it is in Kenya, and I've been in a number of countries in the region and beyond, where of course your and kids are enjoying their schooling methods and stuff. But here is like now a kid who is actually a standard 1 or even a nursery waking up at 4 in the morning and going to school, and therefore by the end of the time you're in standard 4 whatever, depression starts coming in. And if you find again competition is too tough, he's now thinking of how to ensure that you won't transfer from one school to the other, and that is not done. You find some kids coming together and thinking of burning schools. So I think the issue of discipline is very important. The Ministry of Education should come up with programs, even mentorship programs, where again kids start now discussing with parents openly and other stakeholders on how to make education friendly.
Yes.
Friendly, yeah.
Well, indeed, Nyoro, of course, clearly there is a problem in our schooling system. Safety in schools is a problem. We've never been able to tackle it. Even with all the fires that took place last year, we're still seeing fires without proper safety regulations in schools. Now, this issue of suicides and this depression, it means probably even subjecting your child to the Kenyan education system has its own negative effects. They may come out at the other end with a nice certificate, even with an A, but the kind of effect it has on that human being just going through the Kenyan education system could be damaging for life. And I'm also, just to mention this pull-out on the Daily Nation today, there's this pull-out on the Daily Nation. This is why teens in Kenya are committing suicide. We're talking about teenagers who are going to school committing suicide, and this is a report by the World Health Organization. That's the same story I highlighted from page 3 of the Standard. Boranyoro.
Fred, you have rightly put it, and that is why we are stepping in very strongly as the government of Jubilee to look at the education sector holistically, not just in a matter of examinations. And that is why if you try to look from ECDs coming all the way to tertiary, we have actually seen it very prudent to allocate resources. Number one, because we need what is right in those institutions, so that even the people who are coming out of them are not just holding certificates, but they are holding knowledge in their heads. But also to look at the tragedies that have been happening. Definitely it's not a new thing. But we keep making progress. On the safety, of course, there are bylaws that are guiding schools, and many schools are conforming in terms of having what is required for safety purposes in those schools. But also, friend, because resource-wise and infrastructure-wise, when you have a tragedy, of course, it's a setback in the institution insofar as whatever is destroyed is concerned. And we have encouraged as many schools and actually provisioned in our free education and an allowance for insurance, so that when a tragedy happens, of course we don't need to harass parents asking for more money to rebuild whatever is destroyed. But of course I agree with you, we have to look at the software, and the software is in terms of discipline. And as a Jubilee, we are encouraging even schools, and we have started that every school should have a chaplain, so that even as we go to learn physics and as we go to learn the other hard subjects, there is somebody to check our spirituality, there is somebody to check the discipline of our children, because it matters as much as the education that brings about the certificates. And therefore, I believe with the strides we have made, right from ECD all the way, I am sure we will see progress. And if you look actually in tertiary, nowadays you rarely hear about strikes in our universities, strikes and such kind of calamities, because the small steps we are making, of course, are showing some results.
But you may realize that it's now happening more within the high school level, which was not the case previously. Previously, of course, strikes and strife within school environments was a preserve of the universities. Now it's gone down to the high school level. The headline on the page 3 of the Standard reads, "Suicide, the deadly prey stalking our youngsters." suicide, which has been linked to the recent tragic fire at Moi Girls School in Nairobi, is a major problem among high school students in Kenya. Now, to address the problem, the Ministry of Health is running Depression Let's Talk, a year-long campaign launched during the World Health Day in April this year. Time now for a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the political headlines. Raila plans court battles in IEBC, and Raila also demands you fire Chiloba or I boycott the repeat presidential poll. What will happen? That after the break.